Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Gottlieb, Interim Executive Director of ACRO, and I'd like to welcome you this afternoon to our webinar presented in partnership with our sister organization, the Association of Registrars of the Universities and Colleges of Canada, or ARUCC. It's a pleasure to be online with all of you today. As always, we are hopeful that our technology will not fail us. All of us on the panel are working at the mercies of our home Wi-Fi's still, as I'm sure many of you are. And with that, I would like to turn the mic over to my friend and colleague, Joanne Duklas, who will lead the webinar.
Good afternoon, everyone. We really appreciate you taking the time today. I'm going to start very quickly by introducing the wonderful colleagues that are joining us, and then we'll do an overview of the MyCreds and get into some discussion. Let me start first with Charmaine Hack. Charmaine, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here with you today. Charmaine Hack, and I'm the registrar at Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada. And I am also past president of the association, ARUCC, and current chair of the National Network Project Steering Group.
And then we have Kathleen.
Hello, everyone. So glad to have you here today with us. Thank you for joining. Kathleen Massey, Associate Vice President Students at University of Lethbridge in Alberta, Canada, and also the President of the Groningen Declaration Network. Glad to be here.
And then we have Melanie Gottlieb, who's kindly agreed to sit on our panel today. And I believe everyone knows Melanie as the lead on the ACRO side. My name is Joanne Duklas. I work with the Association of Registrars of the Universities and Colleges of Canada as their executive lead for the project ARUCC MyCreds MesCertif National Network. I'm also a former president of the National Association and an honorary member. Plus, I've served as a registrar and assistant vice president of one of Canada's universities. So what we're going to do today, first I'm going to share my slide, and I just want to make sure that everyone can see the slide. So I'm going to do a check-in with my colleagues. Can you see my slide? Sorry that I didn't have it at the front. Good.
Yes.
Thank you. So let's start with MyCreds. What is it? MyCreds is a 24/7 virtual credential wallet, an academic passport, if you will. It's also a digital exchange highway for digitized documents and credentials. It's a shared service, and it provides our Canadian institutions with regional, national, and international connectivity. It can support any type of document, including a language test result, an offer of admission, a confirmation of enrollment, confirmation of graduate transcript, parchment, badge, micro-credential. We've really worked hard to get the support of our community, and we have a variety of institutions and issuing organizations that are joining MyCreds to support our learners with portability of their documents. In our region, up in Canada, we have certain provinces that are early adopters. Ontario is one of those, but also Alberta and others across the country. ARUCC itself is an incorporated not-for-profit. The sector itself owns MyCreds MesCertif. So our institutions, our colleges, and our polytechnics, and our universities. It is pan-provincial. We have 13 provinces and territories in Canada. We do not have a national education board or government entity. All government for education is within each of the provinces and territories. And in fact, we have 22 ministries of education who are involved as a result. So the complexity across the 13 provinces and territories is enormous. So the ARUCC MyCreds project is first a people project enabled by technology, but focused on supporting the learner. We have partners at the national level who have worked with us on this work. One of them is the Pan-Canadian Council on Admissions and Transfer. The other is our own university CIOs. And we also have a working group, a user group, if you will, of the Post-Secondary Electronic Standards Council called PANPEST, who has sat on our steering and has supported us throughout the project These are experts in data exchange and data standards, and we've been wonderfully supported by our colleagues such as ACRO and PESC in the US to help us create MyCreds and MesCertif. And in fact, some of these colleagues have endorsed our work as well as sat on some of our committees. In our own community, we have several application centers and data hubs. One of our oldest is one in Ontario that's been in place since the early 70s. So we have a long history and expertise in sharing student data to support the higher education community. Most of these application centers and hubs started in the 2000s, and they're not in every province. So we have schools that really don't have any supports and are heavily manual, juxtaposed against very advanced environments where thousands of students are supported with hubs and data exchange. With the MyCreds work that we've done, we've taken a principle of focusing first on our learners. So students have been part of our research, our consultation, our testing. They even named MyCreds MesCertif. And today they actually help us with our work in various ways, including with our communication. We also have strength and support from our credential evaluation community. Up in Canada, we have an alliance of credential evaluation organizations, which is supported by the Council of Ministers of Education Canada, another strong supporter of our work. So they are part of our journey, and we look forward to bringing them on to the MyCreds MesCertif world. We're also in active discussion with our governments, who also have data exchange hubs or needs to support the lifelong learner. This gives you a flavor of some of our national and international connectivity. Key to our work is interoperability, standards, and collaborative conversation to create a world that makes sense for learners. And we do this in partnership with so many other organizations. So we thank our ACRO colleagues today for hosting this session, and we look forward to sharing more as we go through. So today we have about 12 schools launched and more soon to launch, with about 50,000 virtual learner wallets available. It's a bilingual platform in both French and English, supported by a bilingual website, and our team is bilingual. And we provide white labeling for issuing schools and organizations. So if you receive a wallet, a document from MyCreds, it is direct from one of Canada's institutions or issuing organizations. It is official. It comes with the learner's permission, but they cannot change it. They cannot modify it. It's a trusted network. This is a flavor of some of the schools that have come on board, and we also have schools such as Ryerson University, Seneca College, Dalhousie University, and more who have joined and are joining MyCreds. One of the reasons we've done this is because there's been some service challenges, and COVID has certainly focused the mind in terms of this. We also found that there were barriers to labor mobility, increasing document fraud, challenges with infrastructure, and so on. But most importantly, we wanted to help our learners, and they reported back to us their challenges with getting documents to where they need to go quickly, accessing them, sending them, making sure they've received, etc. With MyCreds, the core benefits for the learners, all those pieces are solved. As soon as a school launches, at the touch of a button, a learner can send their documents anywhere in the world. We have a newsletter that is about to go out. We have a map that shows the different countries in the world where the learners are sending their documents instantaneously. And it's extraordinary, quite frankly, and a lot of them are coming down to the US, which is why we're doing this session today. So we also have other advantages where we've integrated directly with the college and university systems where we can and where they can to ensure seamless delivery. We've worked closely and are working closely with our schools so that they use formats such as PESC XML. We have a strong history with PESC XML up in Canada, and we're working hard to get our schools up to the highest version for transcripts. The schools that come on board are provided with a dashboard so they can see up to the minute activity on their work that they're doing through MyCreds. And it's incredibly scalable, and our onboarding is enormously effective. We are onboarding schools and launching them within 8 to 12 weeks. It's also expandable. So we've worked very hard to work with our service partner, Digitary, that is an international global organization to expand their partnerships, to expand their reach, so that they can help us continue to be future forward. As an illustrative example, they've just partnered with an organization called Matter, which is a thought leader in the field that looks at verifiable credentials, self-sovereign identity, and distributed identity. Often you'll hear the phrase blockchain, blockchain. Well, what Matter is doing is one of those spaces and places, but it's not blockchain, it's another form. And they certainly can do that. But our vision is to create something that makes sense for our schools, that extends our wallet out even further than it is, to give those learners agency and control. So as an example, we don't charge for things like parchments or badges and micro-credentials to support that lifelong learning perspective that we're trying to achieve. So it's pretty exciting, some of the work that's happening, and I think you'll see more coming down the pipe. But if you hear MyCreds and MesCertif, know that we're doing it in the right way with our schools. They're part of this process, they're driving it, they're in control, and they make sure that the learner is equally in control, but not able to adjust their documents so that they remain robust and efficient and official. So we talked a little bit about the learners, we talked a little bit about the post-secondary institutions. We're also doing work with our government, because there's extensive work going on with the whole digital identity strategy and standards. And so we're working very hard with our immigration authorities, our border control, as well as our other governments across those 13 provinces and territories and nationally, to maximize adoption and support for our learners. So I think you're going to hear more and more about MyCreds as we continue to grow the number of wallets. To give you an illustrative example, in one of our provinces, the schools that are either onboarded or onboarding, over 51% of the post-secondary learners, both internationally and domestically, are represented by those that are coming on board. So you can see our scale is rapid and we're moving fast. So I want to pause now and I want to go to some discussion questions. I am going to take the presentation down, because I think the more interesting journey that always comes with this kind of work is the people. And so I've asked my colleagues, and I wanted to put them on the spot. I've provided you a little bit of an overview of MyCreds, and we can return back to questions from the audience. But I'm going to start with Kathleen, who long ago used to work at McGill, went to conferences in the US with, I think it was the AUA, Kathleen, and it caused you to learn about the grown again. So maybe you can tell us a bit about that story and why this experience came to Canada.
Yeah, and I think you're referring to, when I was at McGill, I often attended the American Association of Universities conferences with a number of universities, and at that time, Tom Black brought the Groningen Declaration Network to our attention. So in April 2014, I attended the third Groningen Declaration Network meeting in Washington, D.C., and it was actually co-hosted by Duo in the Netherlands, ACRO, and the National Student Clearinghouse. And it was at that meeting that I learned about not only the Groningen Declaration Network, but the project that was being initiated in Australia and New Zealand, MyEquals, and the work being done in the US and in Europe and elsewhere in the world, China and so on, regarding creating ways to connect the world to make it possible for learners to be more mobile, to ensure that their credentials could be digitized and easily accessible to them. So this idea, this concept of learner autonomy, and being able to manage their educational credentials toward their life goals of additional learning, immigration, employment, career development, you know, and more I was introduced to this concept at this meeting, the third annual GDN meeting in 2014. So excited by the possibilities for Canada, I brought this home and talked to my colleagues at ARUCC at the annual conference in June that year, 2014. and presented. I had the audacity to actually write a document with a diagram of what I thought this could look like for Canada, and over a few glasses of wine presented it to about 40 or 50 colleagues at a meeting at the ARUCC biennial conference, and presented this concept of taking our well-developed provincial ecosystems of digital credential sharing and introducing this concept of learner autonomy and a national network of digital credential sharing. The learner autonomy being a critical piece of this. This is not typically how we thought of this before, although many of us have had web services and so on that our students can access. So to give them a level of autonomy. So I brought it forward at that time and as a thought piece, as something for our colleagues to think about. Our colleagues, as Joanne had pointed out, are enormously experienced in this area. In Ontario, for example, they've been doing digital transcripts, digitized transcripts, data exchange through Speedy and other models of standards and so on since the 70s. And so, and they're not the only one. Alberta has a similar system with more contemporary technology because it was built in the early mid 2000s, and there are others. And then we have provinces in Canada who are not served by hubs because they're smaller and they just simply haven't had the resources. So there was a gap there that we could potentially think about filling. So we started the conversation in June 2014. We decided together at that point to establish a kind of a research initiative to see what the willingness and readiness would be to even advance a project. We did surveys of our colleagues across the country. And from there, the rest is history, as it were. And now we're moving forward. My own institution, current institution, University of Lethbridge went live with on the MyCreds network, MesCertif network in December 2020. And we're cooking with gas, motoring to include more and more documents every day. We just released our most recent group of parchments for our most recent grads. And so it continues. I've been really impressed with the work of the ARUCC executive in all of this. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that it takes a group of adventurous and courageous leaders who are collaborative and listen well to colleagues across the country. And I feel that the ARUCC executive and Joanne as executive lead have done an outstanding job in the ensuing years between 2014 and 2021 to listen deeply to what matters most to our colleagues across the country who are equally committed to serving our learners and our alumni very effectively and using modern systems. So I just want to tip my hat to Shar and Joanne and Romesh and all the other leaders at the helm at ARUCC for carrying this project forward. So so I'll just end there. And back to you, Joanne.
So Charmaine, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot because I like to do that. You were actually the first university in Canada, the first school in Canada to join, even before we created the MyCreds, to join the Digitary network worldwide in the summer of 2020. So you kind of were along with Seneca College, were our test run schools to see and learn and experience, and tell us what you did and why you did it. You're on mute, Char, just to let you know.
Perfect. Yes, we've been doing a lot of thinking at my university about student records, which is for many schools, for some, as you've heard it, they're still, and as you know, some are entirely still paper-based. We weren't paper-based per se, but we were still attaching PDFs to emails to send things to students. And it was time-consuming, inefficient, and we came to know that there were much better ways of doing things. And we were, quite frankly, really eager to find out who would be selected vendor to power the new national network. At that time, we hadn't even named it yet. So being part of that project, I knew there was a better way. The timing, so we were going to wait and see. There was a very fulsome international RFP, global process unfolding to ensure we were securing the kind of partner that would really keep us grounded and move us into the future. But COVID came along in March of 2020, of course, and as a registrar, I immediately had a problem. Convocation ceremonies were canceled at most of our institutions. I'm not sure of anyone who actually had an in-person ceremony, certainly not in Canada. And we are very committed to students, as our institutions are, and we did some rapid thinking around what can we do to celebrate our students who are going to be graduating without a ceremony, without the ability to bring family around them and to have that traditional experience of achievement. So we really just pulled a team together. This was off the sides of people's desk, I have to say. That's how these things are. And we just said, okay, we've got like 5 weeks to our virtual convocation ceremony. Let's get this done. And so we made a very quick decision, gave Digitary a call. And as Kathleen said, the rest is kind of history. They were so incredibly wonderful to work with. They wanted to help. They dove right in and we started right away. We went live with graduation parchments and were able to send them digitally to our over 8,000 graduating students in June 2020. And we went live and distributed them the day before our virtual convocation ceremony. So if my team, technical and records team had any doubts about the value of this kind of work, it all went away because within 3 minutes of issuing those documents, the screen started to light up, ping, 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 with students picking up their digital parchment. And the next day at the virtual graduation ceremony, everything was in social media, people holding their phones, their iPads, their laptops and saying, look what I just got. And it just added an incredible air of celebration that was kind of lacking at that time, right? So we've now issued graduation parchments digitally to 3 cohorts of graduates. And once we saw that value, I should say we also went live with transcripts the day after we went live with graduation parchments. So this was a really big effort in a very short period of time. And it's really demonstrates how accessible the platform is. So we did not have time to go the fully integrated route. We went live to just ship off our PDF documents digitally so that we wouldn't have to go in the office or do emails and do things that way. But we did transcripts as well. We did build an API. So they flow through smoothly now, but this was to support students who were moving into employment after graduation, applying to graduate schools, needing things for government agencies. Was so positive, and it had such a, we were able to announce it across the university. It was, it was a really student centered, late breaking initiative. So we accelerated our timeline really because of COVID. Since then, we have really felt the benefit of efficiency in our operations. And we have now gone live with confirmations of enrollment letters for current students. We've just issued our first letters for international students who've graduated who need proof of graduation prior to convocation for their immigration work permit. We are going live with some other awards documents, for example. This year's graduating cohort will get digital badges for their, we have a Governor's General Award, gold medal, silver medal, and so on. So we are really now trying to ramp up how we can leverage the platform. And I will say, as Joanne said, we were sort of the first in Canada to go live on the Digitary core platform in this fall. And it was very shortly after we had done our piece and released all of our first parchments with Digitary, that they were actually named the successful vendor for the National Network project. So we were thrilled. So we did sort of what we called a lift and shift to the Canadian platform, built, for Canada by our Canadian institutions with their input in the fall. And so we are fully live on the Canadian platform. Our students are benefiting tremendously from the seamless experience, and we're really just trying to expand it now and get as many documents that need to be official into this platform as quickly as possible, because we're really seeing the benefits for the students, for our learners, as well as for the efficiencies in our operations.
So, Kathleen, at the University of Lethbridge, you've gone live with parchments. Remind me again, what else are you going live with?
Yeah, we've gone live with parchments. We also have issued parchments for 3 graduating classes. We've also gone live with transcripts and Dean's Honor letters. And we're looking at other types of letters into the future, including admission letters, and confirmation of enrollment and graduation will be down the road. So that's what we're looking at right now at this point in time.
And so what were the reasons that, you talked about your vision when you were at McGill and you were doing all that work. How did you, did you find symmetry with the University of Lethbridge when you brought it in there? Were there other reasons or problems to solve that the University of Lethbridge had that made sense for this academic passport called MyCreds? Like, why did it resonate for you, Les?
Well, I think, so remember that this was all inspired by the Groningen Declaration Network, GDN, their work to build, international trust and cooperation, to support professional digital credential mobility and fair credential recognition. And I would say that we have quite a number of international students at the University of Lethbridge from a number of countries across the world, some 70 plus countries. And we also have international exchange programs. So not only were we looking at the domestic context to support our career development for our students and their admissions applications to post-grad programs and so on around the world, but also to advance our support of our internationalization, to support our international students, our students studying abroad on exchange. We really wanted to be part of that global network because after all, it is a small world, and we know that there are many post-secondary institutions in Canada who have significant numbers of international students or other students who study abroad or have studied abroad. So it's a small world, and we wanted to be part of that network. I liken it to internet banking in a sense, right? Giving our students, our learners and graduates more control over advancing their progress throughout the rest of their lives. Whether they're studying in Canada or abroad, whether they're working in Canada or abroad, whether they come from elsewhere and intend to go back. The population is meant to be mobile, and we need to give them the tools to be able to do that effectively without delay. And that's what MyCreds does. It's 24/7, it's quick. And that was true both when I was I'm not speaking for McGill now, but that was certainly true when I was at McGill, which has some 30% of its population are international students studying on what in Canada we call a study permit. At the University of Lethbridge, also equally an important priority. I would say that within Alberta as well, modernizing technology and the importance of preparing students, the importance of supporting student mobility, because within the province of Alberta, there are students who study at multiple institutions and hope to transfer credit. This is true virtually everywhere in North America. We wanted to ensure that we're supporting supporting our ecosystem within the province with more modern tools to support that put more control in the hands of the learners. And MyCreds does that very much, and it is a priority for Alberta to continue to do that. The other priority for Alberta is the connection between post-secondary and career. And so ensuring that students have their credentials in hand when they're at the job interview, or by virtue of their credential wallet, or being able to release it to a company where they've just completed a job interview immediately, and for that employer to know that it's authentic, it's verified, coming directly from the institution, is confidence building in a context where we continue to advance economic development and particularly economic recovery following the pandemic. So these are important tools, not only for the individual students, but more broadly from my perspective. And again, inspired by this notion of trust and cooperation, which the GDN supports internationally and convenes groups to support and advance internationally. So I'll just pause there, Joanne.
Yeah, and Melanie, you have work that you do internationally. You have the good work you're doing in the U.S. You also have some models that are longstanding, such as the National Student Clearinghouse, Parchment, and others, all good and wonderful organizations. And you have a very rich ecosystem. As you've been watching us go through this, what have you been thinking about are the opportunities for Canadians coming to the U.S., Americans coming to Canada? Lend some thoughts there.
Absolutely, I have lots of thoughts. As you know, and as some folks on the webinar might realize, ACRO has been a part of the Groningen Declaration Network since its inception. I'm lucky enough this year to serve on the board as a part of that. And one thing that has occurred to me watching the Canadian project is that Canada is the country in the world that is most like the US. And as I listened to Kathleen telling her story of how it began from that little seed to where we are today in 6 years is dizzying speed, and really speaks to both the dedication, the organization, and the timeliness of the project, that it happened in such a short time, despite COVID. That, even though we've had a pandemic that has lasted more than a year, that it didn't stop it. And we actually have seen, just like many other technical innovations, that the pandemic has accelerated things. And so that's the first piece. And the second piece is that I find the work inspiring. The idea that Canada was able to leverage the existing network and the existing technologies and come up with a project that would give access to this digital ecosystem for learners all over the country, in any region, coming from any institution, regardless of sort of the type of institution, regardless of the elite level of the institution, and regardless of the institution's base level infrastructure, is just incredible. And I think that this is something that ACRO really would like to aspire to support this kind of development in the US. Digital exchange has been a part of the US ecosystem for more than 30 years, and the adoption rate is lower than I would really like to see it. It's almost embarrassing, I have to admit. And I feel like if Canada was able to take this really complicated environment with multiple provincial and governmental entities and create the political will and get the agreement on a set of foundational principles, move the project forward, find funding for it, and implement it in 6 years, this is something that the US really needs to do. And so that's, I would say, my biggest takeaway from this project is that I think that the US, it's inspiring for us, and it makes me feel like we need to step up our game and get all the partners at the table and start thinking about this.
You know, it's funny you say that. We often look to our American partners in awe. I've often said myself that some of the companies I've already mentioned, some of the initiatives I've highlighted, I used to say, we want that. So I think we learn and grow with each other. And as part of that, one of the things that led me to your doorstep for today's session is that we have many different results now coming through the MyCreds channel down to the United States, to your medical associations, to your schools, to your organizations, your governments, etc., because there's a rich history between us sharing our people in places and collaborating in many different industries. So I'll just make a little bit of a shout out to the audience today that anything you can do to help us to let people know that if they get a document through mycreds.ca or MesCertif, which is our French-speaking side, it is official and it hasn't been touched by the learner if it comes through the mycreds.ca channel. And it is one that, in fact, the institution continues to steward. Because if you think of a transcript as a case in point, our institutions do update the information as time goes on. They control that. They make sure it's updated and certified and replaced so that the learner is properly supported. So is there any, Charmaine, you know, you talk about the Canadian context, and we're looking forward now. What are the possibilities? You and I have been working hand in hand in the work we've been doing. Is there any thoughts you have that you think our American colleagues and friends need to know about where we're heading as we continue to build out the MyCreds MesCertif adoption rate that Melanie speaks of, and as people come on board? And you're on mute.
Sure. Yeah, we have talked a lot about this because the future really feels exciting, and as representing an institution that is now live, and as I've mentioned, we can't get documents in there fast enough. We're loving it so much. But I think there is a bigger piece here. So while we want to, and we think we've created through MyCreds MesCertif the structural foundation for institutions to come into the network from wherever they are, right? So we can, some are already ahead of the game in terms of what they're able to do. They have a broader technical bench and they have capacity, others do not. So this sort of leveling up ability of the onboarding options that MyCreds provides is key. And I think some of the opportunities, once we have more institutions across Canada, and we're well on our way, onboarded and leveled up to a standard baseline, we can start to punch out other pilots and interesting things around transfer credits, around rethinking the transcript and the ability learners have to represent their competencies and credentials in different ways for different purposes. Again, all initiated by the learner. So these things are really top of mind in my mind about where we can go from here. And I think one thing that is really essential for MyCreds and MesCertif, and one thing that, as you know, Joanne, we baked into the RFP, the contractual obligations of all parties, is this future forward perspective. So we want to, as a national network, continue to leverage new and not even thought yet. We haven't even imagined some of the technologies we would like to harness. But the future is that we are all, through a shared service, at a readiness level to leverage new technologies, to be part of the thought community around the art of the possible, and being able to contribute into that ecosystem of thought. And so we're really, I think, well positioned for that. There will always be some institutions within the network that are ready on a dime to jump to the next level of what's coming down the pipes. but we will also be supporting those along their journeys. And I think that is the future, is continuing to be flexible, future focused, and continuing to have a laser focus on the learner and their experience and what their needs are, especially as they connect to employment, which is another opportunity area. We're certainly gaining efficiencies within our institutions, but of course the work that we do within our institutions is also learner centric. So the learner at the end is kind of the shining star, but there's so many opportunities along the way that I'm very, very excited about the future of what MyCreds and MesCertif positions us all to do well together.
So I'm noticing there's some activity in the chat as well as some suggestions. Thank you, Melanie. I can see my friend Kevin on the call and others from credential evaluation organizations. So I'm going to kind of start with that one. First and foremost, we're part of a global network that Digitary has, and they have organizations from across the world signed up. And so I think I alluded to this earlier, there's about 2 million at last count from around the world, and that will continue to grow as we grow Canada, as Japan grows, et cetera. They're in Europe, they're in Australia, New Zealand, they're in Japan. So it's also space and place that is there for credential evaluation organizations. So in the case of Canada, we have a quality assurance alliance of credential evaluation organizations, which is supported by something called the Council of Ministers of Education. And they are, the CMEC organization represents the 22 education ministries that I talked to you about. So CMEC is a secretariat support to the Alliance of Credential Evaluation members. So they have quality assurance mechanisms built in as they, shall we say, endorse their own community to be part of their world. Our schools rely on these credential evaluation organizations. Kevin's part of World Education Services, and there are others. So we're in discussions with these credential evaluation organizations to become issuers on MyCreds within Canada. And what happens is, because we're part of a broader network, a learner, if a credential evaluation was placed inside MyCreds or through the Digitary global network, then it would arrive at its destination through MyCreds as an official document, which it is. And it arrives, and somebody else asked the question, how does it arrive? It arrives in the manner in which it was sent by the source issuing organization. So you'll always get that human readable form, which is like a PDF. But if the issuing organization also put in XML data, for example, you can get that as well. And I'll use ChESIC from China as an example. ChESIC has put in as an issuer, which is part of our network, our schools are receiving not only that PDF of the original Chinese transcript, but also an English translation and the XML data in case our schools wish to develop an API connector and automate it. The other question I see in the chat from Terry Reed is, you're with the U.S. university, and how do these documents get to us? And you might have a follow-up, but I will explain. You don't have to actually sign up, because our learners have two ways to send. The first way is they can generate a link, which then appears in an email that they can send to whomever they like. So they identify the email of the receiving organization, and then what the receiving organization does is they get an email through mycreds.ca, and they can go into the hyperlink and view the document, which is coming right from the institution or issuing organization's data repository, basically. They can then download it if they so choose. And if they download it, they're getting that snapshot. If later on the institution updates it, they can go into that same link and they'll see the updated version. Another way is if you become a receiver. And this is very common. Organizations that do this kind of work sign up receivers all the time. Receivers would be, for example, on the Digitary Global Network. The advantage of being a receiver is that if you have high volume from Canada or from other parts of the world where Digitary is active, is you'll have your own portal environment where you can go in and see and manage your workload. You can still see the human readable ones, and if there is data such as XML data that's come with the document, you'll be able to access that and work with it, etc. The value of that is if you do have high volumes, and we do have some American colleagues that get a lot of volumes. I can see that in our statistics, and we're actually going to be reaching out to those organizations just as a support to our learners. These high volume situations are very important for us to help solve, because if they, for example, don't have a public email, there are some organizations in the States that don't have a public email. Well, if they don't have a public email, that's kind of challenging for our learners. You can't get it the first way. That means we have to set you up as a receiver on the global network so that you can get it. So that certainly is an option, and I'll put in the chat the email to help you with that. It may not be MyCreds that helps you with it. It may be our provider, but it is important to consider the implications for the learner, and then we find the best way forward. So I wonder, Terry, do you have a follow-up to that? I don't know if our colleagues can actually unmute and share. Are they able to do that, Melanie? If not, I can't hear you, Melanie. Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, in the webinar platform, we don't have the ability to, oh, actually, we do have the ability to unmute. If someone would like to speak, they could raise their hand.
Okay. Terry, maybe you can just answer through the chat then. Terry, did I direct your question sufficiently? We're a small enough group here.
Yes, Terry, if you have something, I can open the mic for you. So just let me know.
So one of the other questions that, no problem, Terry. Another question that we often get is, you know, what if we need to verify? Where do we call to verify this to make sure that this document that's come to us from mycreds.ca is official? Well, what I'm here to tell you is you actually don't need to call anybody. If it's come through the mycreds.ca handle, in fact, it is official. Another thing that I've noticed, because I've been looking at some of the websites for our partners down in the US that get transcripts, is there's a real opportunity here to help share about the context that is in Canada. For example, I noticed one that wouldn't accept French transcripts. And that surprised me because up in Canada, Canada is bilingual. And so documents are actually available in both English and French. Some schools are French only, other schools are English only, some are bilingual. And so one of the messages I wanted to make sure that I was saying today is that, you know, getting a French document that's all French from Canada is still official and it still should be accepted. You could certainly ask the learner to get a notarized official translation. However, it should be accepted. And so if you notice little nuances like that in your travels, if you could help us to help build knowledge about the context that is Canada, so that when documents are arriving, they are supported in your assessment processes. There's been a follow-up from Terry that said, basically, the process is we'll get an email from MyCreds with a link to the official document. Am I understanding correctly? Yes. What would be the email it comes to us from? It would come to you from @mycreds.ca, info@mycreds.ca. So it would come right out of our system through the channel. And if you wanted, Terry, you could contact me at the email that you see there, and we'd be happy to set up maybe a test so that you can see what it looks like with a fake kind of something that we set up. But essentially, it means that you don't have to come back and verify things, and you can accept it. Learners can send shares to themselves. They can download them, and they can email them to you separately. In those contexts, I wouldn't consider that official, although I think, Char, they can, with the PDF, they can see if it's a certified PDF. through another mechanism, if I'm not mistaken. Did you want to say a few words about that, Shar? You're on mute.
Yep, they can be verified. You can either just look at the document when it comes in, or you can click to go deeper and see, the certification information about the institution. There's a description, around accreditation if appropriate, and sort of the legislative acts, and just sort of the official to confirm the validity of the institution, if you like. And there's usually information on how to get more information if needed. So it's really simple and it's quick. And quite frankly, we've now issued at Ryerson 34,000 documents, and we have not had one inquiry questioning, the validity specifically.
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. People should essentially consider the MyCreds documents like documents from Parchment or National Student Clearinghouse. Thank you for that, because they are. In fact, you could even put on your website that you're happy to accept documents from MyCreds MesCertif, ARUCC, MyCreds MesCertif National Network, and that would be wonderful for our learners. I will say again that there are bodies in the U.S. that do not provide a public email for learners to send documents to. There's one association that I'm talking with where they just don't have the staff to manage it. And so what I've suggested to them is, let us get you set up as a receiver, just so that we can make sure our learners can get documents to you, so that our registrars don't have to be doing double work, unnecessary double work. And it'll help them with their workflow management, because if a registrar updates a document or replaces it or what have you, it immediately appears in their workflow system if the learner has previously sent it to them. Now, Kathleen, your team has been using your system for some time now, and you've also had a lot of interaction with our colleagues in the U.S. Do you have any thoughts or anything that I've tried to highlight some of the little barriers that I'm seeing where we could welcome help from our American friends? Is there anything else you would recommend that we highlight for them?
I think it goes back to trust and collaboration and as fundamental principles, and supporting the autonomy of our students and alumni to grow as human beings, to get on with their lives, accomplish their goals. And I know that we all work every day to support that, those objectives, no matter what facet of post-secondary you work in, and post-secondary related organizations. So what we are trying to do with this network is to achieve those goals and become part of the international ecosystem, so that Canada and the US are not left behind, that we're leaders in this world, that we're out front, making sure our population of students and alumni have equal opportunity. So I just maybe want to say that I'm not speaking operationally, but I haven't thus far, but I will say that there are, yes, we all need to make changes to our business processes to support these new credential wallets and other technologies. You will have done so already to accept Parchment and National Student Clearinghouse documents. Similar types of processes will need to be developed for MyCreds documents. And this may seem on the face of it, maybe this is a bit of a hassle to change business practices, but we have found at the University of Lethbridge that it actually has afforded us some efficiencies, not only improved service to learners and alumni by being able to produce these documents in a speedier fashion, faster, more responsively to their needs, but also it makes it, it's easier for us to do this, getting rid of the paper, getting rid of the postage piece, stuffing things in envelopes, having the mail pickup. All of those pieces were our reality at the beginning of the pandemic. And you know, it has really been an opportunity to become more effective and more efficient as we have implemented this, and as we have started to receive the documents from other schools. So I think we're just becoming more effective, more efficient, and as we adopt new business practices. And so that's sort of a flag to our colleagues. I just want to say very quickly one item. I first became aware of Digitary's international network when we received a transcript link in an email from the London School of Economics in 2010. And our graduate school admission lead received that and said, what the heck, we have to say no, we can't do this. And I said, this is kind of cool, don't you think? Like, we didn't have to open up an envelope or some kind of FedEx package or UPS package. We could just simply drop it into the student's record. So there really is an opportunity to do this more effectively. So good luck, and thank you for being attending today.
So just a couple of shout outs, because I see some folks in the audience and these are relevant pieces. One of them is Doug Holmes, who sits on our steering committee. He is part of the Ontario University's Application Center, and they are important, as are the OCAS, Apply Alberta, Education Planner BC, and others across the country. We are focused at certain points into the future with integrating with our existing hubs. And Doug has had a long history in standards and interoperability. So thank you, Doug, for supporting us in these efforts. The other person I want to do a shout out for is Michael Sessa, who leads the PESC in the States, and also for Ken PESC. He works closely with people like Doug in Canada and has been a tremendous supporter of our work. We are so vested in supporting standards and interoperability, and just want to say thank you to our colleague Michael at PESC for leading the charge and helping us as we've gone on this journey. And we constantly talk about the value of EdXchange and the importance of organizations getting involved in EdXchange, getting involved in standards work and interoperability, and we're 100% vested in that work. And so thank you, Michael. I see also Anna Takina, who represents the BC Council on Admissions and Transfer. Anna Takina represents an organization and is an individual who's extraordinary. They've done some tremendous work in BC as well as across Canada, and have been a wonderful supporter of the work that we're doing. And in fact, their executive director sits and has sat as a co-chair of our steering committee, and they've provided early consultation support and long-standing support to help guide us through all these processes. So I just quickly checking, I don't see others there. I want to hand the floor to Melanie so that she can do her wrap-up notes, and thank everybody for taking the time. If you have any questions about MyCreds or MesCertif, please email info@aruccnationalnetwork.ca. I did put it in the chat, and would be grateful for any questions that come in. And please just open the door for our students and accept anything from MyCreds, MesCertif. We'd really welcome that support. Over to you, Melanie.
You did. There we go. Thanks, Joanne. I appreciate it. And as a closing statement, I just want to say that the world is moving very, very quickly in this fashion. To see MyCreds stand up in 6 years, and the number of these kinds of projects that are developing through the Groningen Declaration Network means that we have to be a little more nimble in how we develop our policy, because we're going to see more and more of these, and it is the right thing to do for the learner. I just want to give a little shout out to some upcoming things happening at ACRO. We have upcoming webinars on June 22nd in celebration of Pride Month. We have the ABCs of LGBTQIA+. On June 23rd, we have a webinar on how colleges and universities are using Campus Reel to turn student videos into inquiries. And on July 7th, we have an update from the Caribbean CXC examinations in 2021 and the impact of COVID. So I hope to see you at one of those upcoming opportunities. I also would like to invite you to our Transfer Summit, which is happening July 8th and 9th. And this is a virtual summit where we will be working on tackling institutional barriers and policy barriers to student mobility in the US. 40% of our students transfer, and we need to make it simpler for them. Our Strategic Enrollment Management Conference will be our first opportunity since the pandemic to meet in person. So we hope to see you November 14th to 17th in Miami to work on your enrollment challenges. I hope that you'll check out our on-demand learning. ACRO has recently launched a series of on-demand learning options, including micro-credentials that you can earn and have badged. We have Compliance Corner, which is free to members. We have a FERPA Foundations course, an international series with more than 10 courses and lots more launching in the next year. So please stay tuned and look to ACRO for your learning in the future. And that is all. I want to thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and I hope to see you online again soon.